Okay, ZBA, you are live and you are recording. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Matt, and welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals work session for April 26, 2022. We're going to get started right away with some administrative applications. The first application is Sandra Brandt at 167 DeForest Road, Montauk, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-33-03-01. And the description is to reconstruct an existing 1,036 square foot kidney-shaped swimming pool and 375 square foot coping in kind. The replacement will be a 1,000 square foot rectangular swimming pool with 353 square foot of coping on a parcel of land within 100 foot of freshwater wetlands. The existing pool setback is 63 from the wetlands. The proposed replacement will be 70.9 feet from the wetlands. We have Tyler here to present it.
Yeah, good evening, board. So this is the aerial of the property. It's a little bit better perspective of what's going on here. Significant wetlands surrounding the property. But the survey itself, they're removing, let me zoom in, it's a little bit easier to see on the aerial, this sort of kidney-shaped swimming pool. And they're going to be replacing it like kind with a rectangular swimming pool. Again, better setback than it is there now. Similar square footage as far as the structure itself. The building department was okay with moving forward without needing variances and just a natural resources special permit. So we were comfortable doing it as administrative application because it's essentially the same structure in the same location.
You said the building department was okay with that?
Yes.
And they're allowed to be okay with that?
Yeah, it's an interpretation essentially of is it a replacement of what was there?
Okay.
What is the ownership of the land off of the parcel? Some of what you've shown us there? That land that extends above there, the parcel goes back almost to that pond, right?
Right. The blue is the whole property.
Right.
What amazing piece of property.
Yeah. So you can see, the survey shows that they own and there's a stream that runs through right just north of the clearing line. It's significant wetlands throughout the area.
It's the Forest Road.
Anybody have any comments on that?
Terry?
No, I don't have an
I
objection.
guess I'm okay with it since it's farther away.
Well, it is, and I'm okay too, because I know that a lot of these especially these old time pools, they have a tendency to break down over time and leak and stuff like that. So almost a new pool in this kind of situation, I think would probably be better suited.
Yeah, I was just thrown by the fact that it's within wetlands jurisdiction.
I agree.
I'm fine with it as well.
Okay. Make a motion.
No, yeah. A matter of the application for Sandra Brandt at 167 DeForest Road, Montauk, tax map 300-33-03-01. Make a motion to allow this application to go administratively. We process administratively.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Second administrative hearing is Peconic Land Trust Incorporated, 108 Wainscott Stone Highway, Wainscott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-197-7-19, multi-year Phragmites removal application. And board members, this is the site where they just took down the old Sapori Damari restaurant on the pond there, but the highway. So you recognize that property, and we all know it.
Okay. So again, here's the survey for the property. Survey doesn't show a lot on this one, but again, corner Montauk High, Wainscott Stone Road. You recognize it when you see it, type of property. What they're proposing to do is take down a very small amount of Phragmites right within the edge of wetlands on Georgia Pond here. The photos do a good job of showing, sort of what we're talking about. And this is, the more essentially the larger area of Phragmites. It's a fairly small amount. They're looking for a 5-year permit. And then to revegetate, potentially starting to revegetate after like year 2, even before the year 5 that they had mentioned in there. So yeah, most of the, that the whole restaurant's been removed at this point in time, and now they're looking to sort of remediate the Phragmites and hopefully reestablish native vegetation along the bank there.
How are they planning to remove it?
By hand.
Just by hand.
By hand.
It's sort of standard, Phragmites application at this point.
It's my district. I'm certainly in favor of this. So.
Yeah, I'm in favor of eliminating Phragmites when we can.
Mhm.
I am too.
Yeah, me too.
So therefore, Peconic, I make a motion for Peconic Land Trust Incorporated at 108 Wainscott Stone Highway, Wainscott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-197-7-19 to approve the application to go administratively.
I'll second it.
I'll
I
concur.
concur.
I concur as well.
Thank you. We're now going to move into our post-hearing decisions. And our first one is Terrence Connors at 50 Bayview Avenue in Amagansett. Suffolk Tax Map number 300-106-1-29.4. The size and location is 14,436 square feet at 50 Bayview Avenue, Amagansett. The description is to construct the proposed residence as shown on the new building plans and survey with changes to the second story and footprint. A modification of the zoning board's natural resources permit, special permit, and variances determination filed 1/9/2013, which granted the construction of a 2,496 square foot two-story residence with a 1,065 square foot attached garage, a 560 square foot rear deck, and an 80 square foot front porch within NRSP jurisdiction. The zoning district is A residence, AE flood zone, elevation 10, and the secret class is type 2. Do we have anybody here who wants to take that on first off?
I'll do it.
Yeah, okay.
You want to do it? No,
Yeah, I don't have, I can go first. It doesn't
Okay,
matter.
go ahead.
The footprint really hasn't changed. It's not any closer to the wetlands. So setbacks are not being altered. The IA system will still remain in the front yard, I think. Yes, let me double check.
Yes, that's true.
Without the need for a retaining wall, which was previously approved. And the IA system's capacity will accommodate the additional bedroom. I think that I'm in favor of this modification and I approve changes that are being made.
Sounds good. Ed, you want to go for it?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Member Savarese to approve it. I think there were several things that were brought out at the hearing. One is that largely this project previously was approved, and so they were looking for a very small change. It was not a change in the footprint, as was mentioned. I think that the change in GFA was because of this change in the loft into a bedroom, but now currently the way in which we would count GFA, it really, because of the cathedral height, would have been held against it. I think that the GFA increases very slightly. I think it was brought up by Tyler. He also mentioned that Tyler's testimony at the time that it is slightly less looming and in the way in which it's going to sit now. There was some phone calls from a neighbor who didn't want to see any building on that road. I think we listened to that, consider it, but I think that this was a pre-approved, and I think that both with the print and the IA system in place and ready to go, I was willing to accept that this rises to the level that we could grant the NRSP.
Thank you. Barry?
If I agree with my fellow board members, the survey that we had gotten with the modification was August 18th, 2021. And yeah, I think the footprint actually got a little bit smaller from the 2013 approval. And I too think it's all better because of the GFA. And as Ed mentioned, it was due to the change in the rule, the code rather, to count the high ceiling double. So now they've added a bedroom, and the IA system is enough to accommodate the additional bedroom also. So I too am looking to approve it.
Thank you. I too agree, and I'll just take a second to quickly go through the variance standards, so we cover them. Does the benefit to the applicant from a grant of area variance outweigh the detriment which grant of variance will cause the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the town as a whole? And I say yes, for reasons already mentioned. Is the area variance to be granted a minimum variance necessary and adequate to alleviate the difficulty causing the applicant to request an area variance? I will say it is also the minimum variance necessary, and once with the swap of the loft and the second floor and whatnot, the way it's perceived today, I would agree that's true. Has the applicant shown the benefit accruing to him from grant of the requested variance outweighs any harm which will be caused to the neighborhood of the town? The answer is yes. Will the grant of the variance cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood? No, because the footprint doesn't change. He's just adding a room on the second floor. Can the benefit sought by the applicant be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue? I really don't think this plays into account on this application. I think yes, no, because I think the fact that he's staying within the footprint is reasonable. Is the requested area variance substantial? No. Will the grant of the variance have an adverse effect on the impact of physical or environmental conditions? No. And is it self-created? And I think it's not this standard does not apply. I don't think so. It's not. You can argue either way, but it's minimal either way. But I too approve it. Good counsel?
Yes, and just for the boards, just to refresh on the self-created item, that is not dispositive to your decision. So it can be self-created, most things are,
Yeah,
but that doesn't.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really make a monumental impact on
We
the.
always incorporate that into our
Yeah.
determination.
Okay, next one is Adam, Aaron, and Alexandra Shapiro at 47 Town Line Road in Waynescott, Suffolk Tax Map number 300-199-1-01.2. Thank you, Tyler, for pulling that up. Size and location is 119,364 square feet, 47 Town Line Road, Orchard at Waynescott, map number 7748 in Waynescott. The description is to construct a 7,200 square foot tennis court within side yard setbacks. One variance from 255-1110 dimensional regulations of 20.2 to allow a proposed tennis court to be located 29.8 feet from the side yard property line where 50 feet is required, and any other relief necessary from East Hampton Town Code. Zoning district is A5 resident zone X, flood zone. Secret class is type 2. And this was in my territory, so I'll proceed. If you remember, this is a long common driveway or road that goes in. There's lots both to the south and the west of this property. This property abuts to the east of this property, abuts a agricultural reserve that is actually part of the property lot 9. The tennis court and the applicant, and rightly so, you want to orient the tennis court north to south so that the proper play, you're not blinded by the play. In this case, this board would typically not grant a variance for a tennis court, and it's very few variances granted in the town for tennis courts because of the double setbacks and the noise criteria that it's trying to protect from the neighbors. In this particular case, the variance requested is a variance requested to the agricultural reserve. So there will never be a residential house on that property. And I think that in particular makes this application unique. And based on that uniqueness, I would recommend approval of this tennis court. Anybody else?
I'll go. Well, I'm looking at this in a different way. It's a vacant piece of property. There's nothing on it. And I don't know how you can ask for relief on a vacant piece of property. The house and the pool that we see on a survey is a moot issue for me because it doesn't have a building permit. So we're basically, if we would approve this, we'd be approving a tennis court on a vacant piece of property. And I don't even know if we're allowed to do that.
Well, I
I
think,
thought there had to be a primary
no, I
structure.
think the house does not have to come before us because it's conforming to all dimensional regulations. So I think that you can't, that's true. There would never be, the building department would not issue a permit for a tennis court of its own because you need a primary residence on that
Mhm.
property.
Right.
So it would be conditioned on the fact that it is part of an application for the house. And I think they're only coming for relief on the tennis court. They don't need to come to relief on that.
But there
Or the
isn't
house.
even a building permit issued on
Yeah.
this, because I double checked. And there's no history, I mean, tomorrow, but everything could change. It could be sold, it could be a new owner. Anyway, for those reasons, I'm looking at it as a vacant piece of property where, in my opinion, there's no reason to ask for relief. And of course, it could be in a conforming location since it wouldn't be the minimum necessary. And based on the fact that there is no record of any kind of history going on with the house or the pool, I'm not in favor of this application.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Well,
Larry?
I'll go, but Denise makes a good point. Well, okay. So, yeah, I kind of agree with, I was okay with the variance. Denise just brings up a very interesting and well thought out point. Just a couple of other comments. I was looking to approve it. On lot 9, there is a house right across from where the pool is going to be. They also, if in this photo that we had from the applicant's agent, there you can see their tennis court, and that will be basically parallel to this tennis court that's being proposed. So at the end, the tennis court also that's being proposed is going to be down about 5.5 to 6 feet downgrade. So to help minimize whatever noise effect there might be. But now I do wonder, I mean, I am willing to approve this, but can we condition this that the house gets built? I mean, we dissolve it if that doesn't happen or if circumstances change?
I can certainly look into whether you're permitted to do that, and you could table this if you want.
The other thing is, my concern too is just, I'm happy to have this discussion. If we did approve this on a vacant lot, and then they come back and say, I don't know why the whole thing wasn't brought to us, the house, the pool, and the tennis court. Because then you could have maybe shifted, if things weren't conforming to zoning, you could work with the applicants at that time. But they could come back to us and maybe they want a variance because of the way the tennis court is situated, or, we don't really know what's going to happen. And that's why I have a problem with the application.
And I get your point. I
Yeah.
get your concern, but I think that there's nothing in the town code that requires you to have a building permit to ask for a variance for future use. It's like going to the health department and getting approval on health department as a necessity to getting your permit. So I don't know if that's a proper nexus to say that we would deny something because they don't have a building permit in hand.
Because we would but then we're approving a tennis court on a vacant property.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I have an issue with.
With no principal structure. on that.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Correct.
So you're
And there was
saying-
no statement made that these own the property next door with the house and.
That's what
common
I'm
ownership.
wrestling with.
And they're two single and separate lots. We're not doing the merged.
Yep.
So when we looked at this is a question for Tyler, I'm not sure it's appropriate in this particular setting. When we looked at that survey, the survey that we have, and we see a proposed house on the survey, that was volunteered by the applicant as a potential future home. there are no building plans associated with this. It was just this, just a survey. With a
I would
proposal.
imagine that that's their plans. Ultimately, if they tried to build the tennis court with that, and then this is just in general, not to the specific application, but if you tried to build an accessory without a principal, you wouldn't get a building permit for it, because you can't do that unless they did own a neighboring property. If they owned a neighboring property, you can have an accessory without a principal, as long as there's room for a house.
And it's common ownership.
Right.
Well, no,
A spouse or something
if
like
it's,
that.
then it would be merged if it's common ownership.
Well, unless they're
Legally speaking,
conforming to zoning, which I would imagine these are, since it was a subdivision. They're probably,
I don't think you can have a contiguous lot and just go for a separate tennis court without a
Yeah.
primary building. I don't think you could do that.
if you own two lots next to each other, it's a specific exemption in the code.
Huh.
Essentially, it dates back to Jerry Seinfeld when he had a softball field on an adjoining lot
That's right.
without a
I
principal.
remember
I
that.
say that.
So they created that to allow that sort of situation where if you own two lots next to each other and one doesn't have a house, it can have just an accessory. And the board had a tennis court application in Montauk somewhere
Yes.
a few years ago now. It was a very similar thing. They had to show that they could fit a residence on there,
Right.
but they didn't have to build the residence. They just had to show that it was possible.
But this board also, I just want you to know, this board also approved, I get the empty lot argument from Denise. I'm understanding, I know you're making that argument, but we did approve one adjacent to the ag reserve right down the street from this a couple of years ago. Isn't that correct?
Yeah,
So
15
There was
Wainscott
a
Hall?
house.
there was a house there, of course. Yes, there was. Now, I think we could argue, if you're looking to deny it, I would say you could argue, and I'll let Ed go in a second, but you can argue if there is a conforming location on the property, that would be a better argument to do. But if you look at the property and the orientation, that property, I don't think you can move it up and down to say there's a conforming location.
And that's what
Actually
I'm
looks like
wrestling
they could
with,
put it right up against the pool.
because,
No, you still have the side yard setback.
because it's an empty lot, you can argue and say, well, put it in a conforming location.
Sorry to interrupt. Tyler believes we've lost audio.
Oh,
I don't hear the speakers anymore.
Matt?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure we didn't lose audio.
Ed, you want to chime in?
yeah.
Let me just jump in. And that's what I'd say. I've got to admit that you raised a very, very interesting point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. And I did not consider that in making my decision and looking into this. I didn't think about it. I think that there's one aspect of it has been mentioned. It's a little bit of the tail wagging the dog. If the tennis court goes in, does it affect the future architecture of the building? I guess that's part of what we could bring up as an issue. And it certainly has happened in a Montauk property where there was some outbuildings approved, and then later on they said, well, we can't do all the things that have to be done to make our house legal because the outbuildings were pre-approved. I get that part of it. I asked about that survey because if that's been entered into the record and that house does, as the chair mentioned, will be able to be built without variances, then they're proposing that a house can exist and coexist with this tennis court as drawn. And as long as that's part of the public record, I don't know that we can hold or not hold them to it, but this is what they've presented to us for consideration. Now, having said that, I look,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no building plans though, right? Just.
No, there's no building plan,
Right,
but
so
I'm
there's
saying there is
nothing,
a
just
survey that they proposed, and it doesn't mean an awful lot, except that is on record now as a working model for what could happen on this parcel. But going back to the tennis court, I looked at it much the same way that the chair did. I was not as bothered as some might be about or reorient this to north and south. I think there is a notion that if you put the tennis court in the other way, it'd be impractical. It's probably not worth putting it in. You wouldn't be able to play tennis in any reasonable way on that property. I thought that the fact that we have the agricultural reserve, which, it does protect it on the nearest side of the side that we're looking for that. I also think it was mentioned again in the TAM that the near affected neighbor does have an easement, encumbered by an easement that also keeps a certain amount of distance between a land that can be used or developed by the neighbor. And then I looked at 255-8-50 and asked the three questions there. does it make an undesirable change in character of the neighborhood? And I didn't think so, but there is another one in the neighborhood. I think the size of the lot is large enough that it'll accommodate it. It was pointed out by Member Berger that it was it's proposed to be a sunken tennis court, and that certainly helps with both visibility and with noise. Then the benefit of the application of the applicant, is there a feasible way to turn it in another direction? I think the nature of a tennis court, as I've just said before, makes it really not feasible to say we're going to make this east or west. And then even though this is a self-affliction, is it something that we feel could be changed in a way to eliminate the variance, or are we asking if we leave it as it is, or is approving the variance too much of an approval on our part? And I said to myself, no, I think that given what we're doing here, the fact that we have the agricultural reserve, that the neighbor has an easement, I don't think that this is going to be in a location that is going to be a problem in the future as they develop the lot. I very much appreciate the point that was raised by Denise, because I think that is something for us to consider, but that's more of a legal point, and it was not part of my decision-making. So I'm willing to approve this application at this time.
And read you the provision of the zoning code that Tyler is referring to, if that would be helpful to you at this time.
Sure.
So I believe Tyler is referring to section 255-1120, because he knows every provision. This is subsection C, dealing with accessory building structures and uses. No accessory building or structure shall be constructed upon a plot unless a main building or principal use already exists thereon, as Denise observed. This restriction shall not be deemed to apply to agricultural buildings and structures. However, where a property owner owns 2 or more contiguous conforming residential lots in common ownership, at least one of which is improved with a single-family dwelling, an accessory building or structure may be constructed on any vacant contiguous lot, provided that the applicant demonstrates the existence of sufficient buildable area to construct a principal structure on the lot upon which the accessory structure is to be constructed. Should common ownership of the contiguous lot cease, either the accessory building or structure must be removed within 9 months, or the owner of the lot without a principal structure must obtain a building permit for a principal building or structure within 9 months.
I'm going to stay with my decision.
Okay. Are we good?
So wait, I have a yes from Roy, no from Denise, yes from Terry, and yes from Ed.
Yes.
Yes.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we have Oscar Junquera at 53 Floyd Street, East Hampton. Suffolk tax number 300-163-03-05. Size and location is 6,359 square feet at 53 Floyd Street, East Hampton. The description is to construct a 50 square foot front portico, a 90 square foot balcony in the front of the residence, and a 90 square foot balcony on the rear of the residence that encroaches on pyramid setbacks and exceeds the allowable building coverage on a parcel of this size. One variance of 255-1110 dimensional regulations of 50 square feet is required for the 50 square foot portico to be constructed to allow 1,322 square feet of building coverage, where 1,272 square foot is allowed. 2 variances from 255-1172D pyramid regulations of 2 foot 10 inches, 2 foot 10 inches, and 1 foot 2 inches for the portico and rear balcony respectively, and any other relief necessary from East Hampton Town Code. Zoning district is a residence zone X, flood zone, secret class is type 2. And again, this is in my area, so I'm going to start off with that. So this is a house that was recently constructed and bought. The developer sold the house to the present applicant. The house itself These are the, I'll say on the outset, these are the ones that sometimes you wrestle with a lot because the house is already maxed out on this property. This guy buys the lot. When you have a new development, I, would have a tendency to say, okay, you max it out. You really don't have a case today to expand it more. That's the way I look at it. So I wrestled with this. So there is let me talk about the back balcony first. Back balcony, they're looking for pyramid variances for a railing that exceeds. Now, the town code or town policy allows a railing to be changed to a glass rail, and therefore it would not impact the pyramid. The applicant has agreed to doing that. I don't understand that switch, that switch, as far as why a glass rail and one not. It's still a structure.
Yeah.
I don't get it. But from this particular point of view, from a practical contractor's point of view, that being myself, I think a glass rail is problematic over time. So I think it would be, I would caution this board to say we shouldn't stipulate a glass rail, because glass rails have a tendency, the way you have to mount them is to break down the waterproofing over time, and you have a big rot issue. And I've seen this firsthand. I've seen it on many occasions. So I don't get this whole glass rail thing. So I'm willing to grant the pyramid so that it can have a proper rail, and we don't stipulate a rail that could possibly be problematic in the future. That's my 2 cents on that.
Okay.
The portico, I'd like to hear some of the board members. The portico, I understand his reasoning for wanting a portico. It is increasing the coverage on the house, and fortunately, it's not increasing the GFA, because I think we would even look at that harder. So I'm willing to I'm willing to hear what other board members say about it. I too think that maybe it is a minor pyramid, although I don't like granting it. And this is the pyramid, but I'd like to hear some other comments on that before
I'll go
we weigh
next
in.
on this one.
Go ahead, Terry.
Okay, well, I look at it a little differently, but, okay, the variance will start with the back, the rear balcony. It was testified that the land in the back of the property where the pyramid is required, front is land that's owned by the town of East Hampton. There's a large agricultural reserve or something back there. Horse farm?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
there's a horse farm. I don't think the horses would necessarily be bothered by that. So, in my opinion, I would prefer to give the pyramid in the rear balcony. As for the front portico, I am going to be denying that for 2 reasons. They are over on building coverage by the 50 feet. 1322 of building coverage, where the 2072 is max. So I think and additionally, for the portico also requires a pyramid variance in the front, and it's very close to the house that's next door, even though that house next door is the developer who built both houses. So I'm looking to deny the portico entirely. I think the owner did testify that night of the hearing that he knew and was told that it was already maxed out, the house, so he knew. And I guess in 2016 redevelopment, they could have made it all conforming, but so I think it does not meet the standards for the variance. So I am looking to deny the portico. Okay.
Totally again. I know other page. I'm looking at it like this parcel is landlocked and it's pre-existing non-conforming, right? So we are, in essence, if we grant these, we're further increasing the non-conformity, which really is against the purposes of zoning. The recent redevelopment consumes the entirety of the allowable building coverage. The parcel is currently improved with the maximum allowable coverage. The size of this lot too is only 6,359 square feet. So I think the time to address all of this was at the time of redevelopment. They could have then, at that point, built a residence that was more conforming to zoning. So for these reasons, I feel that I can't really approve these variances.
Thank you. I'm very much along the lines of something that was just said by Denise, and that is that we regularly have people come in front of the board and say that they've just recently purchased property, but then don't like the conditions under which they have to operate now that they own the property. If you've bought a piece of property or a home in this market, you've hopefully done a little research, you've had representation. So when you come in front of the board and don't feel like what you bought was what you want, I don't think it's our responsibility to be flexible about that. And I think this is an undersized lot. I think that the lot is a very small shape. It tapers from one end to the other. We know it's up this long flag lot driveway. I think that someone purchasing this house may be very happy that it's backed into an agricultural reserve. But at the moment that you purchase the house, you should understand, and if not, you're poorly represented, what the limitations are. The fact is, this was at 100% max of what was allowed for development. So for me, it's very easy to say that although I don't feel that this is a particularly objectionable architectural detail, the portico, I think that this individual should have been fully aware of the limitations on the lot, and I don't think we can provide. I can't feel free to approve that portico as a part of this decision. I will, however, agree with the other board members and not with Member Savarese. Whether or not this becomes a glass rail, which would eliminate a need for a variance or not, I do think the fact that it's backed in against this agricultural reserve, and it was pointed out by Member Berger that it's probably not going to offend the horses as much as we might think it would. I think I can live with that. So I'm going to go along with the chair and Member Berger and approve the pyramid on the rear of the house, but deny the portico.
I actually think, just listening to this, I could live with that too, the pyramid in the rear, but not the portico.
And I will go along with the denial on the portico.
Yeah.
And even to add that, I remember Member Brenneman in a hearing asked about an alternate design on the portico, and they didn't want to entertain an alternate design. So I do agree with that as well, in all reasons.
Okay. So you got that canceled.
I do. So everybody is in agreement, yes, on the rear balcony
Correct.
railing,
Mhm.
doesn't have to be glass.
Pyramid, right.
That's
Pyramid.
correct.
And no on the portico and the pyramid and variance is sought there.
Yes.
I'm clear.
Right.
Everybody is
Yes.
in agreement on that.
Yes. Mhm.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, next we have David Wesolowski at 38 Harborview Drive in Springs. Size and location is 23,853 square foot at 38 Harborview Drive. Harborview map number 121 in Springs. The description is to allow an existing 600 square foot garage to remain within town's pyramid setbacks. One variance of 4.8 feet from 255-1172D pyramid regulations from the northwestern property line is required to allow an existing garage to remain. B residence, the zoning district is B residence zone X flood zone, and the secret class is type 2. So this is in your neighborhood?
Yes, it is. Okay. Just look at my notes for 1 second. Mr. Wesolowski, a set of building plans and a survey with the proposed location of the garage was submitted to the building department in July of 2020. The plans indicated the elevations, the plans were approved, and a building permit was issued September 11th, 2020. The applicant was not made aware there was a pyramid violation until the garage was sheathed and the fascia and the soffit were already installed. Mr. Wazlowski testified if he was aware of the pyramid law, he would have simply ran the roof ridge of the garage the same as the house. He actually apologized for being in front of us and noted he's pretty thorough in all aspects of his life. He was not trying to be malicious or cheat at any laws. He just wasn't aware of the pyramid violation. This is one of those times for me when an applicant, when he received his building permit, he thought everything was in order. And he did his due diligence and should be commended for that. The pyramid, fortunately, my field inspection photos did show that no neighbors are affected by this pyramid request. And that's fortunate for us because it would be horrible if it did. He actually his elevation is lower than all of the surrounding properties.
And didn't he testify that he even moved an additional 1.5 feet or so?
Yes.
Yes.
Away? Yeah.
And so it's not blocking light or air. And for these reasons, I want to approve this application. I mean, it was a legitimate error that was made. And again, he did everything he could. He didn't come to us and say, you know, he was trying to do the right thing. He followed the process, which we have. And it just, unfortunately, there was a mistake made. And it doesn't affect anybody. So that's why I feel that I'm comfortable approving the pyramid variance.
Thank you.
Okay.
Terry?
Go again? Sure. I too am going to approve this. One note on the survey that Tyler has up there on the screen right now, you could see how the mistake may have happened, but on all parties' parts, the building department and the applicant, the property line kind of veers out slightly to the west, I guess that would be. And I'd also like Tyler to put up like the first page of the additional conditions memo that the planner, Eleni, had put out. Because to me, this was a great view of showing how there's really nowhere around in the surrounding properties where there are neighbors that it could possibly impact them negatively. The other houses are all a very large distance away. Can you find it?
Yeah, I should be able to
I
get
can
it.
hold it up. Yeah, so if you see there, the neighbor to the, well, I won't say direction, but at the right side of the top, and there is no house or anything else anywhere close to that. So while it could have been done, I think right now the difficulty to correct it would be much greater than leaving it the way it is. So I do think it meets the standards. I think the benefit to this applicant does outweigh any detriment to the town. It's the minimum variance required. And I think, there are alternatives. However, it doesn't seem like that would be a practical thing to be done at this point in time. So I'm looking to approve this application.
And that 4.8 feet takes, Tyler, correct, is at the point where the corner of the garage is closest to the property line.
Yeah,
So it diminishes as the property line, as it goes further away.
and it was the
So
roof.
it's really,
there's a roof ridge,
a minor variance is
Yeah.
requested, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
I think the points have already been raised that are most important. I think that any individual who goes to the building department and gets a building permit assumes that it's been vetted to a certain extent, and then they move forward with a project. This was a project that was moved forward apparently responsibly. It was built, as he said at the testimony, was built to the letter of the drawing he submitted. It wasn't as if he's coming back in with a building that now is 1.5 feet larger or anything like that, or that it's got a greater elevation. I thought an important fact was one that was already mentioned by Member Savarese, and that is that the neighbor to the north that's the most effective is at a much higher elevation. And so what is typically the effect of a pyramid, a need for pyramid variance is that, the peak of a home has some way to obstruct views or to be considered a nuisance to a neighbor. In this case here, I don't think that's at all the case for the neighbor to the north. I think it's also important that that neighbor and another neighbor did file letters of support.
I forgot to
And
bring
thought
that
that
up.
that was,
Yeah.
that they thought he had done a nice job with it. It was done neatly. They had no complaints about, it's a small project, but nonetheless, during construction, there were no complaints about how it was taken care of. So for all those reasons have already been mentioned and the ones I've just mentioned now, I'm willing to approve this. I think that it was, I think it was a responsible effort on the part of the applicant, and it was an unfortunate that this was slipped through and that he didn't know about it, but that's just the way it wound up being. I'm approving it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and I'll approve it as well. I have nothing else to add. Thank you. Next, we have Hillary Evans at 22 Broadview Road, Narragansett, Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-104-2-29.1. The size and location is 213,026 square feet, 22 Broadview Road, Narragansett at 300. Tax map number 300-104-02-29.1. The description is the placement of 200 cubic yards of sand, planting of beach grass, and erection of sand fencing on a property containing coastal bluffs, beaches, and tidal wetlands. A natural resources special permit, NRSP, pursuant to 255-420 of the town code, and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is A3 residence. Secret class is type 2. Who would like to?
I'll start on this. Yeah. This is a site that, this is an applicant that has been in front of the board before and has was approval of a home that's now constructed, and they're looking to do some work down on the at the toe of the bluff. This house the house currently sits 65 feet above sea level. And it sits about 143 feet back from the line of beach erosion, which is basically the high tide mark where the most damage is done by water that's coming to that spot. The house is not in imminent danger, but it was pointed out in the TAM that there are reasons that there should be some additional work done, but nonetheless, according to TAM, proactive management and stewardship of coastal properties should be encouraged. In that sense, we encourage this to happen here before we see any greater damage. I think that there was a point made here at the time of the hearing that other applications, and in TAM, other applications are open. One is to cut and repair a dilapidated bulkhead that exists now that was placed many years ago as part of a previous project in the area, which is now not functioning but does exist in the sense of poles. There's also, that was in October of 2019. That was nothing has been acted on, but it's something that's been proposed. There's also a proposal to install 328 linear feet of geocube seawall. That's also an application that has not been forwarded, but has been discussed. And there is one that's being acted on now to construct a staircase from the bluff to the toe, which is now under review. I'd like to make a note about that is separate of what we're considering tonight. That is a dangerous situation. That's a long staircase that plunges down there. I know it's under construction. Nonetheless, some safety should be thought about relative to leaving that unattended for much longer. But as I said, the residence sits back far enough. There was this notion, and so that this is not an immediate danger, but given the fact that there's great stability on the bluff, there's quite a bit of planting coming well down close to the toe, and that it's in good shape now before that starts to slide, before they start losing it. They were looking to have this work done to somehow stabilize that so they can move forward. They asked for an expedited application because it was pointed out in the TAM that this work should not be attempted in September, October, because the storm season would remove most of what was put there before any plantings could help or any stability could take place. And I think that by and large, the planning department approved of this. They had some suggestions about additional work, long-term planning. But again, that notion that staying on top of this maintenance and being proactive was a positive thing. So for those reasons, for me, I didn't have a problem approving the NRSP. I think it's work that makes sense. I think it's work that seems to be slightly ahead of the curve and what can happen. I don't think there's any guarantee that this work is going to hold up for a great deal of time. But on the other hand, it's certainly going to protect what's behind it for the short term. And as they move forward with whether they can move forward to the bulkhead or not. So for those reasons, and I think it was fairly well presented at the time by the applicant's representative, I'm willing to approve this application.
Thank you, Ed. Larry?
Okay. Yeah, I am in agreement. Only a couple of additional comments. As it was discussed that in 2020, the sand replenishment was not done until the fall. And the planner, Brian Frank, in this application did say the time to plant is now, actually in the spring, so that the beach grass can establish its roots. There's a comment in the TAM that with the prior coastal restoration project, the access to this shoreline is going to be from the town-owned Albert's Landing Beach parking lot north through a roughly 8-foot gap in the southern bulkhead. So I just want to note that. I believe we've requested, I don't know if the board requested, a copy of the scenic easement and that the applicant has, and Rick Whalen was the agent for the applicant, and we did receive all of that information from him. And we also have a letter of support from the president of the Broadview Property Owners Association in support of this NRSP to do the sand replenishment and shore restoration. So I too am looking to approve this NRSP.
I agree. For all the reasons stated, I agree that I'm in favor of an NRSP.
Thank you. I too agree, and I just want to make a note that I think this applicant, because I remember the original approval of the residents. They are good stewards of the environment, and I think it'd be prudent to do this. My only question is, their period of time, Tyler, is basically within the next 30 days, right, to do this work. Because the whole concept is that once the beach opens down the street, they're not going to have that access. So they're in a really tight time frame now, and I don't know if we're going to lose another year. It depends on how fast this, I would think if it's going to be, will it get approved in time for them to carry it out, or are we going to lose another entire year for this? And I don't know if that's directed at you. I'm looking,
Are you talking about because of the 62 days to issue a determination?
the termination and then the follow-up of the building permit.
I think under these circumstances, given that time is of the essence and that this is a pretty straightforward and universally agreed to application,
Yeah.
I will have no problem making sure you have a determination for adoption next week so that it could be adopted, stamped in by the clerk, and they can immediately apply for their
Yeah.
Oh, that would be great.
I'm sure 200 cubic yards of sand only takes a couple of days to do, maybe a week at the most.
Yeah.
But the
Well,
processing of the paperwork
And the planting of the
usually
beach
takes
grass.
longer.
Yeah.
I think it was mentioned at the
Just my
hearing
concern.
I think it was mentioned at the hearing that was projected that the work was not the problem here, that 200 yards would be installed, fairly quickly and efficiently.
Yeah.
It was just getting the approval so they could move forward. So
I
if
don't-
we can expedite it for next week, I think it benefits
And-
everyone in
yeah.
this.
It's not a particularly complicated application, so I have no,
Yeah.
barring being hit by a bus.
Don't even
It should
say
be
that.
no problem.
Who's your back?
Thank you.
I'll let Nancy Marshall know.
An emergency contact.
All right, thank you. Next is Cap Key Dolphins Partners LLC at 16 Dolphin Lane in Amagansett. Suffolk tax map number 300-131-05-11. Size and location is 7,417 square feet at 16 Dolphin Lane, Montauk-on-the-Sea. Section 8, lots 87, map number 2438 in Amagansett. The description is to demolish all existing structures and to construct a 2,299 square foot two-story residence outside of the town's pyramid regulations with a second story and roof decking, walkways, new pervious driveway, AC units and utilities, a new IA sanitary system, and to clear approximately 1,450 square feet of vegetation on a parcel of land containing dune land and beach vegetation. The relief sought a natural resources special permit pursuant to section 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 2 variances are required for this application. Variances of approximately 3.5 feet, 2.1 feet, are required from 255-1172D of the town code to allow the residence to be constructed outside the town's pyramid regulations approximately 3.5 feet along the western lot line and approximately 2.1 feet along the eastern lot line, and any other relief necessary. The zoning district is B Residence AE flood zone, elevation 9, secret class is type 2. You wanna-
Okay,
or-
oh, no, I guess, no, it's just
Oh,
Terry.
this is Terry's. Terry's, go for it.
This is Terry's? Oh, I don't want to go first. Oh,
Oh, go
making
ahead.
me go first.
I don't want you to go first.
I don't know. Okay. I have struggled with this one.
You've done all the research. so
I
go
have struggled on this. Okay, look, it's a very small lot size. It's only 7,417 square feet. Now, the current house as it exists is 1,600 square feet, and the proposed home is 2,299 square feet. There were many things pointed out in the TAM about the density, not the density, but the maximizing, that they're so close to maximizing the GFA and all the dimensional items on this property. So the board should consider the degree of the development of this particular property, considering the neighborhood and in this area of Dolphin Drive along the Napeague stretch there, and that we should consider if we can support this kind of development in general. I think the project as it was laid out, actually the footprint of the proposed residence is not all that different than the existing footprint. There are a number of things that they really do have a very nicely laid out project, I must say. A couple of things that they're proposing to do is they're bringing their parking onto the property itself. And they're bringing the first floor of the home up to FEMA compliance, so they have to bring it up. I forget the exact dimension, if it's about 7 feet additionally. So the first floor will be raised, and it's actually that component that is making the pyramid requirements that, to come into the FEMA compliance. Other than that, the house, I believe, currently is 3 bedrooms, and from what I see on the plans, the new home is also proposed to be 3 bedrooms. It's actually, they have a nice revegetation plan that was submitted, and as far as going back to the pyramid, I'm sorry, I forgot to say it. The current pyramid violation right now from the original home is 275 feet. And as proposed, the pyramid will be reduced to 136 square feet. And as I said, that was due to a lot of bringing the home into the FEMA compliance, the elevation of the first floor. There's a pretty robust revegetation plan. The planning department did recommend some other woody vegetation, but if this were approved, it could be contingent on their approvals. So I'm struggling with that the building coverage and the GFA are almost the maximum allowed for this size. And once again, I'm struggling with that's the maximum on a property of this size where there is no NRSP required. However, this property has an NRSP required. And I'm struggling that with the 255-420, that even though the variances, in this case, I could live with them for the reasoning that they're going to exist, the pyramid, they also eliminated variances on setback that the original house, I believe, had. So it was non-conforming, but I'm struggling with the NRSP part of this. And I think that as nicely laid out as this project is, I'm going to have to deny it because of the NRSP. I think the concern about preserving the dune land and the beach vegetation, that I'm going to deny this application, considering.
Mhm. I think some good points were made there by Member Berger. This is a corner lot. It has 2 front yards. They are seeking to increase the GFA by 699 square feet, which is a sizable increase. I think that has been pointed out often by the planning department that the maximum allowed on a parcel is not a guarantee. It's a suggestion. It's what we know we have as a limit for approval. It doesn't mean you have to be approved to that size. All of those things are important considerations. This parcel, everyone will remember, is sitting directly to the east is a parcel that's owned by the town, which demonstrates just what this dune land could look like if it was preserved. And it's impressive. I think that at the time, Member Brenneman said it was about as beautiful a parcel he could think of, that it demonstrated the dune ecology. I think that's all very, very true. And I think we're very concerned about what we do to maintain in this subdivision. However, in this subdivision, and it may be unfortunate, but it predates us by a long spell. This property was cut up into very small parcels, and these parcels have now been developed and fully developed, and we're seeing them on a regular basis getting redeveloped. So our challenge here is when an applicant comes and wants to update, change, improve, redevelop a lot, what are we doing to protect the environment in that lot? And that's what we're charged to do before we issue an NRSP. When I looked at this one here, there were several things that I give credit for the applicant on. I think this is a very creative and a largely positive way to increase house size with a minimal impact on the environment. And I think this was a very a smart and well-designed project. I think it does have the problem of how do I put a house on a parcel with 2 front yards that has a limitation in space and get what I want. That was the applicant's problem. For us, is the project, I think was pointed out by Member Berger, is it too large? Is that why we're turning it down? Because it's too large a project. I thought there was a couple of things else to consider here. One is that the re-veg plan looks to me to have been well done, well thought out. There was the note that soils would not leave the site so that native soils would stay. The native soils, of course, have a seed bank in them that can help regenerate native vegetation, what we're looking for. I thought the fact that the nonconformities were being reduced and not increased. So this is a larger parcel that we have not increased the pyramid violation. Now, we had photos at the time that showed that the house immediately to the west sat very close to the property line as well. And these 2 houses sit up and they are pretty much staring at each other at a fairly good height because of the nature, and a lot of Montauk is this way. These very small parcels, houses are bunched right up to one another. So what do we have? We have a very sensitive lot where an applicant is looking to add, increase the size of his house, modernize it, obviously, increase the size of it, and come up with a plan that they would hope that we could think is about as intelligent a usage as you can get on that parcel. So with that in mind, after going through all these statistics that we hear, and there was a lot about, and it was already mentioned, somebody mentioned here about how, we're maxing out size, we've changed elevations, we're looking at the pyramid on this, and we're looking at how it's set on the lot. I nonetheless come back and considering at the end here, we were charged in the TAM NRSP standards of 255-551 to ask ourselves if the preservation of natural resources is being cared for as closely as possible, and under 255-4-12, will the environment be diminished, polluted, degraded, in any way beyond what we should be willing to accept with the standard. Also, is there alternate that was under D, and under D1, alternate reasonable uses of the property are determined not to exist. I don't think that means there's not alternate uses of the property, but I do think that the way in which this was designed, proposed, is about what you can do to maximize an intelligent use property under these circumstances. So although I have some misgivings over size, and I can share that with Member Berger, I'm actually looking to approve this because I think that they did a very thorough job of examining the site, taking into consideration those things we care about, the environmental preservation of the little bit of land that does exist around this, and it's going to continue to exist, and that the footprint hasn't changed that was mentioned very much. I'm willing to approve this at this time.
Thank you. Denise?
As a board member, I'm concerned about the level of development on this parcel and that the building coverage in gross floor area is increasing to nearly the maximum allowable. And for me, I don't feel this is not a level of development that meets the standard for an NRSP. As noted in the TAM, this subdivision is comprised of approximately 115 similarly sized parcels with due land and beach vegetation. The other issue for me is this is a 7,417 square foot lot, and this level of development is not appropriate for this property and for the neighboring and for the neighborhood in general. The natural characteristics of this site are such that this will cause undue disturbance or disruption to the dune land and beach vegetation and have a significant negative impact. More thought should have been put into preventing the loss of potential damage to the designated natural features. The application is not in keeping with section 255-410, which is for the protection of East Hampton Town's beaches, dunes, bluffs, wetlands, marshes, and coastal resources. It is not in compliance with 255-551, preservation of natural resources and alternative uses of the property and alternative designs, which does address smaller buildings. The applicant, I also don't feel it's in compliance with 255-540, which is compatibility and which is D, and for K, environmental protection. So for these reasons, I am denying this application.
Thank you. I'm actually in the camp of member Johan here. I looked at this entire property as smart. I looked at it as if we're looking at redeveloping or whatever size is the only thing you're looking at, but part of this lot is constrained by the amount of room that you need to put in an IA system, which is an environmental improvement to the property. I understand the gross floor area is increasing. However, they have reduced a number of nonconformities relative to pyramid height and whatnot on this property. They are increasing the floor elevation to FEMA, which again, I think is an environmental positive here. It's part of the resiliency of this area that is required. So I think that does support in our SPE standard. And in doing so, they're not increasing the height of the building any more than it is present today. So I think that this project was well thought out and does meet the NRSP standards, even though the size has gotten larger. Some of these projects that we are getting before us are not only increasing the houses, and I get the stress, I get that part of it, but this project, a lot of projects are coming to us with an increased hardscape too on it, which is a problem for runoff and all that stuff. There's not a lot of hardscape on this project either. I thought it was a very thoughtful project. So I'm in support of the project. So I got a stink bug on me. There you go.
Whatever that means.
Did you send them on me?
Whatever that means.
So anyway, so we're split.
You are split. As a result of the split, yes. You know what happens when in a split situation?
It goes to the town, right?
Actually, it's an automatic denial.
The what?
It's an automatic denial.
Denial. Well, I know that. Okay.
Before you start the other one, may I ask for a bathroom break?
Sure. Matt, we're going to take a little break.
Because of Jen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Getting more.
Right. Last time, I guess we just entered his opinion.
Going first.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, our next is, the applicant is James Chinook at 301 Marine Boulevard, Amagansett. Suffolk Tax Map Number 300-177-01-42. Size and location is 16,000 square foot at 301 Marine Boulevard, contiguous to the waters of Atlantic Ocean. Map of Beach Hampton, number 1319, Block 7, lots 16 through 19 in Amagansett. The description is to construct 769 square feet of first and second story addition, 132 square foot of first and second story decking, and an upgraded sanitary system within jurisdiction and setbacks of the dune crest. The relief sought is a natural resources special permit pursuant to 255-420 of the East Hampton Town Code, and 2 variances are required for this application. Variances 63.8 feet, 63.9 feet, and are required from 255-440 of the Town Code in order to construct the additions 36.2 feet and decking 36.1 foot from the dune crest, where 100-foot setbacks are required and any other relief necessary. Zoning district is B Residence VE. Velocities of flood zone. Secret class is type 2. And Terry, I think I'm going to ask you.
Again. No.
Can you do it? You want-
Go first? You want, no? You don't?
I will, but, okay. Yeah, this was one where actually there's a lot of history on this one. Way back in 2018, not that far back, there was an application for this, which was denied by the board. There was a hearing on this. They came back in. The original hearing was for an 808 square foot addition and 373 square feet of first and second and a roof deck and 9 variances. That one was denied by this board. Back in May, we had a hearing for a new application on it. And the additions requested now are 769 square feet and the 132 square feet of decking. What had been removed, well, I don't know if it's significant what was removed, and they're offering an OWTS system. The variance is a 63.8 for the additions and 63.9 from the dune crest for the decking, where 100 feet is required. And there's an NRSP on 255-4-20. Well, there's a long history on this that was in the TAM. There were several things from the original development of this property back in, I believe it was 2003. There was an NRSP and a number of variances. And then there were some subsequent applications with a sanitary upgrade back in 2002. I don't know, my chronology may be off here. Anyway, but this is another one where they were getting close to the maximum of the 50% cap on this pre-existing non-conforming home. And again, we were cautioned by the planners, and the planners are actually recommending, since this is so close to the dune crest, the entire property, it's seaward of the Seha line, that this property, they recommended that the property should be redeveloped and moved back. The applicant and the agents, they said the cost of that, and they just wanted this what they were calling minor additions. They have 3 bedrooms in the house today, and they have two children. And they wanted to enlarge the bedrooms for the children as they get older, so that they each have their own room, and one of them in a better location, which is near the kitchen, I believe, of the home. So I think I feel that this still at the lower amount of the additions and decking. Not sure why the decking would be needed, but that I think this is still a big ask for this property, considering its location from the dune crest. So I am going to deny this application. I think 63.8 is a very large variance, and 63.9 still a very large variance for this application.
Okay, thank you. Denise?
Okay, I'll go next. The residence is in an obvious vulnerable location. And as already stated, it's roughly 130 square feet seaward of the coastal erosion line and is in the VE 17 flood zone and is 15 feet landward of the dune crest. Further increasing the nonconformity of this residence is, in my opinion, against the purposes of zoning. And when it comes to proper coastal planning, dictates that we not continue to expand vulnerable non-conforming structures. So in my opinion, this project is not in compliance with 255-551, preservation of natural features, and in this case, the dune crest. There are alternative reasonable uses for this property. There are alternative designs that can be looked at into a smaller design. Project is not in compliance with 255-540, compatibility and environmental protection. The variance requests, I agree with Member Berger, they're substantial. I mean, our additions are proposed to be 36.2 feet and decking 36.1 from the dune crest, where 100 is actually permitted. 255-860 does limit the expansion of pre-existing non-conforming buildings to no more than 50%, and these numbers are coming right up against that maximum cap in a vulnerable location. I mean, I think the cap is 808, and they're going to 769. So for these reasons, I do not feel this application meets the NRSP and various standards, and I'm denying the application.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in agreement largely with fellow board members. I like the phrase that you used, Member Savarese, proper coastal planning. I think that we have this very vulnerable spot. We're looking for large variances. We are sitting 15 feet back. We know what we have there. It was pointed out, and I think there was extensive comment by the applicant's representative that this beach seems to be expanding and growing, and that there hasn't been any real threat to these properties. And I would say that is well and good until we get the storm that changes their mind on that. And this is the kind of place that is, if under the right circumstances, is extremely vulnerable. I would say we look back historically on people dreamed of a beachfront house. You see these places set right down on the water. Well, this is really right down on the water. This is very close to a very vulnerable spot. And now they've got a house that exists with 3 bedrooms, and they want to make this a substantial expansion to it. I think that beyond the simple comment about the variances that are required, is this a wise idea for to be adding this much structure in this location, this vulnerable location? We're going to be thinking down the line, long term. What are we recommending to see that we're doing the minimum environmental damage? And what are we going to do to maintain these properties in the simpler state that they're in? I'm not in favor of encouraging a large addition like this one in this location. I agree. You made the point, Member Savarese, and I made this note here that 255-4-12 and also 255-551, this preservation of natural resources, alternative reasonable use, alternative designs, all of those could have been addressed. I think every one of them. And then in terms of compatibility and environmental protection, I think the same thing. I think this could have been thought out for it to be more compatible for that site, for its long-term environmental preservation. And I'm not sure we're doing anything to protect the environment with this particular project. So I think that there was some reduction, but I think that the point that we pushed very close to the 50% to the maximum development on this lot is it leads me to say that for many of the same reasons that were already ventured by my fellow board members, I'm looking to deny this application.
Thank you. I'm going to agree on a number of things, but I'm also going to expound on a few things that I believe. So I think that I do agree that this is a prime example where a retreat should be the alternative and the proper course. I know that as a board or board member, as a zoning board, we have to look, our standard is to be reasonable. And I think that if when we hear town code is there going to be any natural resources that are degraded or reduced? In my opinion on this application, the answer is no, because it's on the landward side of the house and there is no reduction in natural resources as a result of this application. The question is, what is the threshold at which denial and approval are going to be? I was going to lend to approving. I thought the applicant did come to us trying to work it out and think, but there are some concerns that this board has. And I think that it's been through the board a number of times. It's been expanded. So I think in this case, I'll go along with my other board members and deny it. But I'm on the fence about it. I'm not a strong denial. I'm telling you that right now. I don't think there are any reduction in natural resources on this property. I think the owner has been here for 25 years as well and been a pretty decent steward of the property. So
I agree on that point.
and I also think it's a hardship for him to try to retreat. So his only
I'm not
alternative.
sure the retreat is in his plans here. I'm not sure that's going to work, but I do think that this is not that dissimilar from a previous application that the board ruled on. And if it had been significantly reduced, but I don't feel it was significantly reduced. So
Right.
I'm respecting a little bit of what was said
Right.
by a previous board and part of my decision.
I agree. Okay, thank you.
I'm not
Counsel,
sure
we
we
okay?
mentioned we had 2 hearings. Did we mention we had 2 hearings?
You did.
Yeah, February, also. So, okay.
Okay. Our next and final discussion is Marjorie Goldner at 30 Indian Wells Highway at Amagansett, Suffolk tax number 300-172-05-13. The size and location is 28,389 square feet at 30 Indian Wells Highway, Amagansett. The description is to construct a new 1,350 square foot first story addition within side yard lot line setbacks and a 614 square foot second story addition outside the town's pyramid regulations with new patio, screen porch, relocated pool equipment, relocated shed, removing of non-conforming shed, and an upgraded IA system. The relief sought is 2 variances are required for this application. One variance is a variance of approximately 2.843 feet is required from 255-1172D of the town code in order to construct the second story addition approximately 2.84 feet outside the town's pyramid regulations applicable to the southern side yard lot line. One variance of approximately 0.56 feet is required from 255-1110 of the town code in order to construct the first story addition 10 foot from the north side yard lot line where a 10.56 foot setback is required. The zoning district is a residence zone X flood zone and type 2 is the secret class. We would like to start this off.
Okay, this was a hearing. This was a hearing we had, and I recently watched it. It was Brenneman's case, and he did the photos and did the field report for us. And we'll remember that this was a pre-existing non-conforming structure on a very long, like the photos up there, I mean, the surveys up there now, very long, narrow lot. Anyone who visited the site knows that the house sits right to the road and the lot is very deep, and the shed that's to be removed in the back corner is there, and there's some garden area. And all of that is mentioned in the TAM and what was going to be removed. And the swimming pool exists, and we walked on there. There's to be an extension on the northern side of the lot. That extension only required, there's a variance required only for a very small portion of the house just to be squared out that contains an extension on the kitchen. It was for slightly less than or slightly more than 6 inches. I have no problem with that, nor would I have any real problem with what went on with that extension on the north side, because it didn't require a variance and it seems to be somewhat in line. A lot of our discussion, though, was centered on what was happening with the extension that was to take place on the southern lot line, where an existing roof shape would be extended out to the west significantly by, I think the chair made it clear it was 34 feet, 3¼ inches when we were done. There was some discussion, it was 32 or 38. 34 feet. 34 feet, 3¼ is what I took off at the hearing when we all settled. But either way, we see what's happening. There's a 2.8 foot height variance, but with the volume of that becomes 2,843 square feet when we extend it into here. I think when we look at this, we had the architect comment, and I think that the questions that were raised about alternative design, I think his answers were reasonable. You have a certain look to this building, you're going to extend it out with that look, it stays in character. Aesthetically, I had no problem with what they proposed. I think that what we saw on the south side of the property being extended out, I also don't think that that is on its own a reason for to consider a denial in here. I will say, however, and it was pointed out in the TAM and was brought up at the hearing, is that we are extending a very large nonconformity here. And that puts us in a position as a board of approving this, if we do approve it, by coming down and saying this large nonconformity is being approved. That, and particularly in a pyramid violation, seems to me a dangerous way to go. I looked at the fact that there's also the size of the addition. I have it here. Just wrote that the existing GFA right now is 2,432 feet and proposed is 4,366 feet. And they are, they're pushing themselves to allow to get past the maximum allowable on this lot. That's a very large increase from that. And the stated reason from the applicant was online with us as well. They were looking for a larger structure, and the 7-bedroom structure that was proposed would allow for family and family entertaining as the years go on, as this family might expand. Those are all good reasons for the individual, and I thought the architecture was done correctly in terms of aesthetics, but I can't get past the approval of the nonconformity of extending it for to that degree. I think the rest of it, certainly the 6-inch variance on the north would not have been a problem to me. There were several letters, and it's important to note that in one of the letters of complaint where somebody who was against this said it was in a historic district. It's not in a historic district. That's been looked into. So these houses, it was mentioned at the hearing, but just as a follow-up, it is an historic area, but it's not an official historic district. So it doesn't really fall under that kind of consideration by anyone. So this is an interesting one because I don't think aesthetically I'm terribly bothered by any of it. I do think that the tremendous amount, well, not tremendous, but the large increase of GFA, and particularly this extending a nonconformity and the height variance really put me in a position where, as much as I think it's a reasonable project from many points of view, I'm going to deny it at this time based on the fact that I don't want to get behind extending a nonconformity of that size in this particular situation.
Thank you. Denise?
Sure. I couldn't agree more with Member Johan. And, when you first look at this, it just doesn't seem like anything. It seems very benign. And it took me a while. I put a tremendous amount of thought into this because I just was back and forth with this one over and over. But what I finally came to the conclusion was the approval of this application would mean extending a pre-existing non-conforming residence roof line by 34 feet in length. And I think that alternatives could have been looked at, and it could be achieved by another method, which we did discuss at the public hearing. And the aesthetics of a house is not a variance standard. The increase in GFA for me was also an issue because the existing is 2,432, proposed is 4,366, maximum is 4,439. This is a difference of 133 square feet. So I do think 255, 850, I think this will cause an undesirable change in the neighborhood, and I do think that this can be achieved by other methods besides the requested variances. So for these reasons, I am denying this application.
Thank you. Terry?
Well, I don't have much more to add. I agree with both my fellow board members. At the GFA, this is another property, a pre-existing property that is coming to its 50% maximum, very close to that. Additionally, in the TAM, there was a notation that it appears that there going to be 7 bedrooms in the house. They were offering an IA system. However, as we know, when the IA system code was changed, the intent was not to allow or necessarily mean that to increase the density of use on these properties. I too was very bothered by particularly the pyramid on the south side, even though the neighbor on the south side was in favor of it. But the 34-foot extension of the already non-conforming pyramid on that side is just too extreme. And as we know, even with the neighbor's support, that these run in perpetuity. So what the neighbor says today, it may not be what the next neighbor says, but no, I too am looking to deny this application. Again, dittoing what member Johan said, the small variance for the kitchen bump out on the north side is something I probably could live with. That was not egregious, but overall, I think this project is too aggressive, and I'm denying it.
When I first looked at this too, I too said, this looks like a very benign request. And then as we got into it, it is a substantial request. I think the increase in nonconformity on that second floor addition is too large for us to even consider. I know that this board has looked at these before and also has denied them. And I think and to approve that would set the wrong precedence of an increase in a nonconformity. If you remember my comment during the hearing was almost 100% of the world's architects always design within pyramid. And I think the same can be done here too. I think that to design outside of a pyramid knowingly from an architectural standpoint is just is sort of a barrier that should be looked at hard and not be crossed. So with that, I will also vote to deny that. What about the other side though? Where are we on the other side?
Where they have the smaller
The little kitchen
pyramid.
bump out. I mean, I'm
Well,
okay
that's
with
also
that.
a pyramid over there.
Yeah,
So
that's a
we're
pyramid.
going to
It's
be
just side
creating a new nonconformity on the north side?
It's just
Wouldn't
side
that
yard.
What?
It's just side yard over there.
Yeah, it's not a pyramid.
Not a
It's not a pyramid over
It's
there?
a side yard.
That was
This
pre-existing.
is that
Karen.
structure right here. It's just, so this is the roof line of the new,
That was only a.
Oh,
side
okay.
yard.
I'm sorry. I
Just-
thought there was a
it's
pyramid on
just that side yard
also.
right here.
It's to me, it was very small and I think
Yes.
that minimal.
That's very small. Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I could live with that.
It wasn't just that it was small too, it was the nature
I
of
can
it.
live with that.
Okay. So we're unanimous
Yeah.
in our decision.
So just to be clear for the record, the board is unanimous that the variance of approximately 0.56 required from 255-11-10 of the town code in order to construct the first story addition 10 feet from the north side yard lot line where 10.56 setback is required is voted up unanimously. And the rest of the application is unanimously voted down.
Correct.
Correct.
So
You got it.
Very good, thank you.
Should we address the non-conforming shed?
Shed was to be removed.
It's to be
Well, it
removed.
said it was going to be
I
removed,
thought,
so
I thought it was going to be removed too.
I guess it will be.
Condition your approval.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
but it's not part of our variance, when they're not asking, well, it's not conforming.
Yeah,
As a condition, you can ask them to
Yes.
remove it.
yeah,
Well, I think we should do that.
yes.
Thank you. Oh, looks like we're gonna meet our time frame pretty good.
Yeah.
Let's see, interpretation, extensions of time. How, do we need to review this or should I just read these in and?
They're all very straightforward. We don't have any objections to any of them. They're all fairly recent. I think the oldest one was 2017. So
I
they're all
agree, I don't know if we
they're all
need
pretty
to.
straightforward extensions, I think.
Well,
Right.
Tyler gave me his copies.
You have-
So what are you thinking of doing?
Well, we're just gonna go through these. These are relatively all within the last 3,
Yeah.
4, maybe 5 years. They're very straightforward as Tyler, all of them are, as Tyler says. Do we need him to report on each one of them or do you think we can look at
No.
them?
No, I have a copy of Tyler's memos,
So-
you know, and the planning department is okay with all of these,
Yeah.
so.
So we
The
can
only
go through.
question I have on is Herman.
Yes.
When we had the modification on that property, 26 Seaside, the name had changed to Hinchin. So should this actually be under Hinchin?
The original permit name is Herman, and that's
I
just
know
how,
the original
that's just
is.
how we continue
Yeah, I know, but then we did the mod, I thought.
Right.
Right, but then until the title or whatever is
Doesn't
registered in the
matter for you?
county, I think it's still, the building department still even issues permits under the,
It's really just the tax map number that matters.
yeah,
Okay,
whoever's on the
all
tax roll.
I also believe that on the documents I have, we have both names, like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know Nancy Lynn had put both names
Yes,
on.
she did, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually, that was an issue earlier tonight with Connors. We didn't bring it up, but in Connors, there was that question of whether or not Connors still owned the property, but it was still stayed, the application stayed in that name.
Well, Congress is the new,
Originally, it was Grabowski.
Grabowski was the
Yeah.
original.
And then it
yeah.
changed to Connors, and I
Yeah.
think it may have changed again, but yeah, ultimately it's the tax map number. The applications run with the land, so.
Okay. All right.
all right, so the
So-
first, Terry, the first one is Marshall Creek and Michael Grimstead at 17 Bering East Road, East Hampton, that's me actually, Suffolk tax map number 300-55-01-20. The extension of time for ZBA determination, which graded a 9.7 front yard variance to allow the construction of a garage 40.3 feet, the front yard lot line where 50 foot is required. A building permit has been obtained, but the work has not been commenced. So therefore I make a motion for Marshall Cheek and Michael Grimstead at 17 Bering East Road, Suffolk tax map number 300-55-01-20 to approve the extension of time. Are we making motions on extensions? We're not making motions on extensions of time, are we?
Yeah, we are.
It's very clean for the record when you do it.
Okay.
Because,
Yeah.
it
Okay.
is then
Fine.
written to the applicant.
Then under those circumstances, I'll second that.
Okay.
No, I concur.
Okay. Ed, you want to handle Mac?
Mac at 132 Navy Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map number 300-26-01-9.1. It's for an extension of a 2018 NRSP and variances. Therefore, I'll make a motion for Mac at 132 Navy Road, Montauk, Suffolk County Tax Map 300-26-01-9.1 to approve the extension of time.
I'll second that.
I concur.
I concur as well. Dean Mogul, Terry, you want to handle that?
Sure. This is Mogul NRSP and variances. This is an extension of time request for 164 Westlake Drive in Montauk. The determination was granted the NRSP and the variances, and the planning department says the conditions appear to be the same as when the condition was rendered. So in the matter of Mogul, for the NRSP and variance extension of time for 164 Westlake Drive in Montauk at tax map 300-019-05-8. Make a motion to approve the extension of time.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur as well. Thank you. Terry, you might as well handle Herman.
Okay, and Herman, this is at 26 Seaside Avenue. This is a ZBA determination originally filed in July 18th, 2017 for an NRSP and variance in order to construct a new two-story residence. Again, the planning department has said the conditions on the property appear to be at the same as when the determination was rendered. So for Herman at 26 Seaside Avenue in Montauk, tax map 300-032-07-6, I make a motion to approve the extension of time.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. And Terry, should we stay with you to do the draft minutes?
Okay, the minutes,
Doing
yes.
such a good job.
You are, you're
Wait,
killing it.
So in
Gonna
the
say what's
minute,
good.
what was last week? The 19th.
The 19th. Oh, here.
I did look at the minutes and I make a motion for the draft minutes of April 19th, 2022 to approve these minutes for the East Hampton Town Zoning Board of Appeals. As written.
I'll second it.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you. Council, we have one resolution, Deborah DeFino.
Forgot about
Good. So this was drafted and distributed last week. We had a slight revision. If the board recalls, there was a question about conditioning this approval on the removal of the PVC fencing in the town's right of way. And we did look into that. And the consensus is that if the highway department will produce a letter saying that it has no problem being there, we can stay. If they cannot obtain such a letter, then it has to come out. And that's what we put into our conditions. In addition,
I'm going to save it for this.
is the determination to approve a application to construct approximately 693 square foot first floor, second floor additions, an 80 square foot porch addition, a new roof over an existing deck, and an upgraded sanitary system of land. Budget and RSP and some variances that were actually reduced significantly. And the board noted that in its determination that this application, the applicant and their agent came back and really did the work in listening to the planning department. And this is all reflected in this draft, and I would ask that this board approve it as written. Do I have a motion?
So I will make a motion for Deborah DeFino at 26 Flag Avenue in Montauk, tax map 300-031-01-28, to adopt the resolution as written.
I second.
I'll concur.
I concur. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. With that, I think we're going to have a motion to adjourn. We are going to go into executive session.
Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
We will make a motion with an adjournment, I think, right?
Right, yep.
So, and we're going into executive session to discuss a legal matter. So, Chair, would you like to make that?
I would. I'd like to make a motion to close the April 26, 2022 meeting of the East Hampton Town Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, and to go immediately into executive session at 8:18 p.m.
Second.
I concur.
I concur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, you good?
Just give me a second, please.